Elon Musk just dropped a set of announcements that could seriously supercharge Tesla stock, with SpaceX now likely heading toward an IPO next year at a potential $1.5 trillion valuation. Elon's past comment is suddenly front and center, that if one of his companies goes public, he would prioritize longtime shareholders of his other companies, including Tesla. So how could that actually work? Today, Phil Beisel and Cern Basher joins us to lay out 4 realistic paths for this to become real. And yes, Elon himself has weighed in. When you connect the dots, it raises a wild but serious question. Could several of Elon's companies soon be worth multiple trillions? And could Elon himself become a trillionaire? The answer might surprise you. Cern Basher is a chartered financial analyst running his own investment advisory firm called BrilliantAdvice, providing wealth management services. Phil Beisel was a founding member of the technical team at EV maker Rivian and has also held various engineering management roles at Apple. Welcome, Phil, and welcome, Cern.
Hey, Herbert.
So I appreciate you both joining us today. Elon replies to both of you quite regularly, and specifically just recently, Phil, you had a couple of posts. He's been on fire. He's been replying to you, giving us incredible information. He talked about AI 5. We'll cover that later. But right off the bat, he did say, so we'll cover this, but he basically confirmed that SpaceX is going to go IPO. And then you said, oh, well, if Tesla shareholders, how could he reward Tesla shareholders? You gave 4 options, and Elon liked it. He interacted with that. So there's something there that confirms that Elon truly does believe that this is something he wants to do. So just last year, this is just on the 2024, in a year and a bit ago, he said, I've mentioned something like this before. But if any of my companies goes public, we will prioritize other longtime shareholders of my other companies, including Tesla. Loyalty deserves loyalty. By the way, I'll tell you that if he said this last year, he said that one of my companies goes public, he's probably already at that point made a decision, Tesla, SpaceX is going to go public. I mean, maybe XAI, but it's unlikely. But okay, so he said this, loyalty deserves loyalty. This is confirmation that SpaceX is going public soon. Eric Berger wrote an article saying, after years of resisting it, SpaceX now plans to go public. Why? And this is his article. And other media outlets came out and said SpaceX to pursue 2026 IPO, raising far above $30 billion. By the way, it's going to be way more than $30 billion, but at $1.5 trillion. Elon said, as usual, Eric is accurate. So another confirmation that's correct. So then you came out, Phil, and you said, okay, SpaceX IPO and Tesla shareholders. I can see 4 ways that Elon could reward Tesla retail shareholders. So before we show those 4, what's your thinking here, Phil?
Well, generally, I kind of think that he's, in a sense, I did want to tease him out to see if he. So he did like this post. And I think that the optics of that are that he's basically saying, yes, I agree with what I said in the past, and I'm going to hold to it, and I'm going to look at creative ways to do it. I think the ways to do it are I put up 4 crazy ideas. I think they're hard to do. I think there's a lot of issues with them, but I think if there's a will, there's a way, and I'm sure his legal team at Tesla will try to figure out some plan. And then I went from there, and I just posted those 4 possibilities.
So, Cern and Phil, if I ask you guys, what is the likelihood that something like this could happen? That Tesla shareholders, certain of them, could actually become treated more favorably by with the SpaceX IPO.
I'm just going to go 50.
My initial cut at this would be that one of Phil's ideas is excellent, and the other 3 are not workable.
Yeah.
So Phil's betting 25%. Which is pretty good.
It's okay.
No. But I think in a slightly different way. I think it's problematic if he tries to reward Tesla shareholders. The problem with that is Tesla doesn't know who all their shareholders are and for how long. They don't actually have that information. They know some of their shareholders, but not all of them. And then how do you make sure that you don't reward people that may have voted against Elon's comp plan, for example? Maybe they can't. But I think there's one easy way that they can reward Tesla supporters, and that's Tesla owners. They know exactly who Tesla owners are, and they know exactly when you bought your first vehicle. If they want to reward loyal Tesla supporters, then they can go back to the ownership database that Tesla maintains themselves. That would shortcut the issues, I think, with the shareholder side. The problem is owners and shareholders may not match up one for one.
Yeah.
So either way, there's going to be some disenfranchised people here, I think, potentially. But
Yeah,
that's the way they can do it.
It's obviously very tricky. I mean, on the surface, it makes all the sense in the world, right? I mean, everybody would agree. It makes sense, but I think it's very tricky to do. Which of the four is the preferred path, do you think, Cern?
Yeah, Herbert, if we want to just kind of go through those.
Let me go through the four.
Yep.
But before we do that, just reminder, Cern, that Elon's comment a year ago was longtime shareholders.
Yeah.
Elon, he's he's a little smarter than the three of us here.
Well, it's possible. It's possible for Tesla to get a handle on, how long you've owned your shares, but it would be a bit of a task to do so.
Well, somebody recommended this, which is it's easier to actually find out who voted yes. So instead of like longtime shareholders, who voted yes, which means, right, that you're a shareholder.
Again, are there any legal issues with that? Would it be bad for me to be a longtime shareholder and not vote for his compensation plan and still support the company? I think you run the risk of some legal challenges.
Okay, let's go through the four that you said. Do you want to go through each one at a time, or should I go for the four first and then?
Yeah, I just want to. This is the one I know most about. This is the one I experienced personally at Rivian when Rivian IPO'd. The idea here is that the underwriter sets aside percentage of stock. It's a direct share program known as direct share program, also known as a friends and family program. And so that now you can offer stock either at the IPO price or slightly below at a discount, and to particular individuals, usually employees, and usually employees' friends and family. And we did this precisely at Rivian. Morgan Stanley managed to program the direct share program, and we were able to bring in monies. And what you do there is you elect, or at least the way they administered this plan is they say, how many shares do you want? I think it was how many shares. It could have been how many dollars, but I think it was how many shares do you want? And then they give you an allocation depending on demand. So you either get 100% of what you're asking for, or you get some ratcheted down percentage. So I don't know how viable that is beyond a base. I heard that, and I may not be correct in this, but I heard Uber did this for some of its drivers during its IPO. Did that happen? Okay.
As part of Rivian's plan, though, Phil, didn't Rivian also, according to my research, set aside about 7% of the shares for people that had pre-ordered a vehicle, in addition to the friends and family part?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. I mean, I don't know about the percentages, but I do know that you are correct that early owners of the vehicle or people who pre-ordered the vehicle could participate in that DSP program. Yes. But Cern, I think the allocation there for them was very small relative to what the employees could. So like for me, I could put in, whatever I wanted. And by the way, they filled the whole request for me. As for those individuals, I think they were like a very small number of shares allocated. And I suspect, by the way, if this were to actually happen and this were the plan, that rewarding Tesla shareholders would go in, it would be a very small number.
So why can't this work? It's already happened before, and it's just verified too, right? Just making sure that they truly are investors of Tesla or other companies, as opposed to accredited, which means only the rich, high net worth people with certain criteria of how much they make in yearly basis can invest, which is the issue. You're letting people invest in something without having to be accredited. Why can't this work? Cern, do you want to show your?
It can work. I think this is the one that's most likely to work.
Okay.
The problem is the verified Tesla retail investors part is the issue.
Okay.
So how do you get verified? How do you verify retail investors? Is it just U.S. retail investors? Is it international investors? Right, and all the issues around that. It's possible. I'm just saying it's a bit of a lift. It's a big lift if they want to verify all their retail shareholders.
You asked
Now,
Gemini for their analysis, and this is what it gave out.
yeah. Now it's interesting. Let me just share a little bit more information about this with you because there's some good precedents for this, and as Phil mentioned, Rivian is a really good one. Airbnb reserved shares for its hosts.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be a super host. You had to have
No.
tenure hosting for several years. You had to be a U.S. resident. So in that case, it was just limited to the U.S. Okay. Uber reserved about 3% of its IPO. And the Airbnb one, by the way, was 7%. Uber was about 3% of its IPO shares were reserved for drivers. You had to have at least 2,500 lifetime trips and a good standing with the company. And interestingly, on that one, they realized that a lot of their drivers didn't have enough cash to buy the stock. So they actually gave what they called a driver appreciation reward, which was a cash bonus anywhere between $100 and $10,000.
Wow.
And the drivers could keep the cash or they could choose to take the stock.
Mm.
So that's what they did.
Nice.
Robinhood was interesting. This was a kind of an extreme example of this. They used their own platform, their IPO access platform, and they reserved 20 to 35% of the shares for their own retail customers. It was a really smart decision, right? The problem was the demand was so high, they had to resort to a random allocation. So, if you requested 100 shares, you got 0 or 1. So I think there was some frustration around that, but the demand was so high, there's nothing else they could really do. The challenge with that is that, it required a robust platform to handle this. And of course they had their own, right? And they were showcasing that. So, Airbnb knew exactly who their hosts were. Uber knows who their drivers are. The problem is Tesla doesn't know exactly who all their U.S. retail shareholders are.
It's going to be global too, isn't it?
Well, again, can it be? Airbnb restricted it to U.S. only for some reason. So there may be an issue there that we don't have full appreciation for, right? And then, of course, if it is global, it would only add to the challenge of figuring out who all their retail shareholders are globally, right? Now, GoPro actually was one of the first companies to do this back in 2014. And they simply emailed their customer marketing list and allowed people to sign up. So that was one way to do it. But the easiest thing for Tesla to do, if they're looking for the easiest path, is look at who has purchased a vehicle. Those are people that supported the company and that they bought the product. That is defensible, but again, it flies in the face of what Elon said in terms of rewarding shareholders. So there's the disconnect with that one. But that would be the easiest path, because if you bought a Tesla all the way back in 2013, you could be rewarded perhaps more than somebody who bought a Tesla in 2024 if they wanted to go down that route.
Is this a dumb question? But when we had to vote, didn't we also have to kind of do a verification process of how long we've had it for and so forth?
For Elon's compensation plan, no. If you voted your shares through Fidelity or Schwab or somebody, no. The Tesla doesn't know who you are.
That's true.
If you ask questions on the say.com platform, then Tesla has some information about you for that, but they don't broadly know who all their retail shareholders are, and particularly worldwide.
They did I think that platform they used to verify for question holders, shareholders that wanted to pose question at the shareholders meeting, or earnings call. I think it was earnings call. Yeah.
That's the same platform. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other issue with this one, the SEC has a rule. It's Rule 10b-5.
Yep.
And it prohibits preferential treatment.
Yep.
Right. And one of the issues with this first proposal on that is if Elon said, hey, if you're a Tesla shareholder, you're guaranteed a spot in the SpaceX IPO. Well, that could be viewed as market manipulation.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. So they have to be very careful about this. And so that's why I think it'd be easier to not go the shareholder route and go the Tesla vehicle owner route.
And I certainly think that also would indicate that he would be, if he was going to head down this path, he would not make any indication publicly on X at this point that, because it would be seen as manipulating the Tesla stock.
Yeah, it would have to be sort of after the fact that they say, okay, we're going to look at shareholders at the end of the year, and they would make that known maybe in January.
Cern, do you know what is the highest reserved amount for the direct share program of any company? Do we know?
Based on my research, it was Robinhood at the 20 to 35% range. It's a big range, I know, but potentially up to a third of the IPO shares were reserved for their customers. It's a big number.
That's a crazy big number. But here's a crazy question. Is there any particular reason it can't go higher?
No.
Yeah.
Particularly if a company wanted to raise a lot of money. And SpaceX is going to need some money, I believe, for these AI data centers in space and building these starships.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, just as an aside, why do people constantly say things like, "Oh, they're trying to raise 20 to 30 billion on a potentially going out at 1.5 trillion"? It sounds grossly small.
Yeah.
Something's wrong with that number.
Yeah, 500 billion.
It's $1 billion more than Saudi Aramco raised. They raised 29 billion.
29 billion.
So I guess it's a safe assumption to assume that Elon's going to outraise that one, which was the previously biggest IPO offering.
In other words,
I think we could easily see north of 100 billion raised, if not more.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're saying that's just linear thinking.
Yep.
Okay, let's cover the other options. So you said another option is Tesla buys SpaceX shares and then distributes this as a dividend.
Yeah.
Tesla uses this cash to buy a stake in SpaceX during the IPO. Can't they just do a share swap? Then distributes those shares as a special stock dividend to Tesla shareholders.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think this is viable at all, but I put it up as an interesting idea because, I don't think Tesla's going to dip into its balance sheet to do this, but it's at one level it feels very clean, at another level it feels completely unworkable. So, but I thought it was at least a good idea.
The challenge with this, Phil, is that these are two separate legal entities.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so for Tesla to distribute SpaceX shares, they have to buy the shares first. The problem is then they have to use cash to do that. People could end up suing Tesla because they use cash to buy a private asset that was owned by Tesla CEO.
Right. Yeah.
It's a related party transaction, right? Which is, a lawyer's dream.
Yeah.
The other thing too is this could be potentially a taxable event for the shareholders that receive this. You would potentially owe income tax on the value of the SpaceX shares received.
Yeah, certainly you would if you just received a dividend from a company. So it would have to be like that.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was very viable, but it does pin an interesting alternative.
Okay. Private placement tender offer before the IPO.
Yeah. Now this one, I thought this was actually reasonable. It would largely be like you're investing in SpaceX, but you're given an opportunity because of your status as a longtime Tesla shareholder. So it's nothing real.
Not just their employees, because they already do the secondary sale twice a year, Elon said.
Yeah, this is I'm putting this up as if it is the last final private investment in SpaceX.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that prior to the IPO.
I think the problem here is that, I think the problem here, I think this is quite viable, but I think the problem here is it probably requires individual purchasers to pass a sophisticated investor test.
So it's only accredited then, the high net worth folks?
Yeah, like accredited or sophisticated. Yeah. So I don't. What do you think about that, Cern?
Yeah, I think that's a bit major issue. And I think another part is how many shareholders can a private company have? They're bumping up against that limit.
That's true. It forces them. Yeah, there's a rule here that forces them into being ostensibly public, right? Yeah,
and SPV paperwork, for accredited investors, it's a bit of a pain in the rear.
Yeah.
And of course, the problem is if they do offer shares to the general public, then that's considered to be an IPO. So you can't do an IPO before the IPO, right?
Or you're doing an IPO.
The accredited investor situation.
Yeah. Cern is just shooting you down. Okay.
The other thing with that one, Herbert, by the way, just back on number 3, is kind of a risk of self-dealing. As an example, if Tesla itself buys SpaceX stock, or these investors through this private placement, buy SpaceX stock, and let's say something happens to Starship, the next Starship launch explodes, right, and causes a decline in SpaceX because people are now worried about the viability of Starship. Elon opens himself up to a self-dealing kind of case, where he's used Tesla cash to bail out, SpaceX. Again, I don't think that's the case, but you could see how some of these things could be twisted in some of these scenarios.
And then bundled warrants issued by Tesla. Tesla gives shareholders warrants, which is the rights to buy SpaceX shares at a set price as a perk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is
You
my
can't
crazy.
issue a warrant.
This is my craziest idea, by the way. Go ahead, sir.
You can't issue a warrant for a company that Tesla doesn't own.
It doesn't
Right.
own, yeah.
They'd have to first buy a massive block of SpaceX stock to cover the warrants.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it'd be like me issuing a warrant for SpaceX. I can't. I don't. I don't own enough shares to be able to say, here's a warrant on this. Right. So there's limitations here. So I think we're back to number 2, where, Tesla has to buy the stock first.
Cern, would this idea have any viability if Tesla had already owned SpaceX stock today?
I think so. Yeah, that would be easier. Yeah.
I mean, because, for example, it's not true. We know it's not true, but we know that SpaceX, for example, owns a appreciable amount of XAI stock. So, I'm talking about another future scenario there, but yeah, this is a tricky one, and I didn't really think it was very viable. But
I've got a wild ass idea out here. Could Elon gift stocks to longtime Tesla shareholders?
Yeah, let's put that in the crazy idea not to be considered.
Why?
I don't know why he would do that.
Well, I
think he would let people invest in SpaceX. That makes sense. The company takes in the capital. That's what Elon would do. I don't think he's in the business of gifting his shares to Tesla retail shareholders. I don't see that happening. It's a nice idea, Herbert, at Christmas time, but I don't think that's.
Yeah. Perhaps the closest you get to that is sort of how Michael Dell has put money into these private Trump accounts.
Loyalty deserves loyalty, is what he said.
Look, the whole point of me putting together these 4 things were I'm not trying to tell Tesla anything. I'm not trying to tell the world anything. I'm just trying to say that Elon has indicated he wants to do this, and there are lots of ideas on the table, and they're all very tricky to pull off, I think. And I think we disposed of a few based on that, and I knew going into it that some of them were kind of harebrained. But my favorite was the DSP model, the friends and family model, because it's fairly clean from it's been done before, and we we made sense of it early in the conversation. But I'm very if Tesla's going to do this, I'm very, very intrigued by what they might pull off. Because I think it would be, my guess is it would be unprecedented, and certainly Elon is known for unprecedented acts. So
you guys are both incredible. Great information shared there. Wow. Okay. So back to my first question then, and given all this, where do you stand, Phil? What's the likelihood that somehow Elon will figure this out and Tesla shareholders and XAI shareholders and Boring shareholders will be able to somehow get early access to SpaceX IPO?
I still give it a 50-50.
50-50.
50-50.
Okay. Cern?
Yeah, I think there's a high likelihood. I think initially I was extremely skeptical about this, but I see 2 potential pathways, and both of them are reasonable, not perfect, but reasonable. One is to reward Tesla vehicle owners. That seems like an easier pathway to me because Tesla has that information. The second pathway is to reward shareholders. That's a more challenging pathway. It could be done. It would cost some money to figure it out, who all the shareholders are and all that. In that case, they're probably going to have to partner with somebody like a Robinhood or somebody that's got a platform to be able to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I know that Elon wants to, and it's just the question of, are there some insurmountable legal hurdles? I think, as I read the tea leaves, because Elon liked Phil's post, I think that's a slight signal that
big signal.
This is something that they're working on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Has it passed all the legal checks yet? I don't know.
Yeah. And to my earlier point, I would not have expected him to put any public comment on it at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But for him to just say, okay, he goes, if anybody wants to be an investor in IPO, and you happen to be a Tesla investor, XAI investor, and all that, then you got to go through this path, contact Robinhood, and then let that company say, okay, well, you need to prove you've got ownership, you got to send me. I've had to do this work previously for Tesla. You have to say, hey, show me your screenshots of how many shares you actually have from different brokerage houses. That's enough for them. Something like that. Like let that Robinhood or whatever platform be the one to do all that work to figure out, to validate if you truly are verified.
There's issues with that because people can forge that kind of stuff. I also think that, unfortunately, and I don't like to say this, but I think international shareholders will be left out cold in this opportunity.
Yeah, could be true.
By the way, if you look at this post that I have, there are a lot of international shareholders who have weighed in and made that very comment. How would we be included?
Yeah.
So,
okay. Now, I think the international vehicle owners, that would be easier because Tesla has that information.
Yeah. Certainly another issue is is Elon being specific about long time? Is it long time, or is it, in a sense of what is your loyalty really? Is it based on, outside of the provability of it, is it how much are you in, or how long have you been in?
That's to me, it's how long you've been in. And for me, if I was, it wouldn't just be people who started investing 2 years ago or 4 years ago. Honestly, for me, it would be like 2018 and before that, because you've been there.
I think my point on that is that is it something where they say, well, if you own one share, your reward is equal to if you own 10,000 shares? And I think at the end of the day, that's kind of how it would materialize. I don't think it would be a test on how much Tesla shares you own as a whole.
Right.
Because I feel that just brings up too many unfairness questions across certainly a retail base. That might be something reasonable on the institutional side, but I don't think on the retail base that's reasonable.
Herbert, I think it'd be hard enough to verify that you're a Tesla shareholder. It would be really hard to verify you're a long-term Tesla shareholder. That would be much more of an administrative burden to do that.
There's an administrative burden, and this is just another way to slice it.
To say it lightly or say it easily, this is not our problem.
But it's great. If Elon did this, that he's going to create other companies, or at least that many of his other companies will go IPO. XAI,
maybe,
Neuralink. These all, likely will go that route. Well, like I said, he doesn't like everything. It has to have a high burden. But the reason why SpaceX is going to go IPO, it made it very, very clear. Larry was explaining to me very well. He said that the amount of money that you need to do to have space-based AI is so big. We're now at a new magnitude of how much money he needs for all that work that he wants to raise 500. The race to the AI data centers is so heavy, and we're talking more than trillions that's going to be invested, and you want to be at the forefront.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that he sees time as the ultimate competitive weapon, and then therefore having the money is the accelerant there. So yeah, it makes complete sense that he wants what would hold him back from building another couple 100,000 Delta variants of the Starlink V3 satellite for space deployment? Cash. Yeah, that's what's going to hold them back, right? So,
Herbert, do we know the nature of Elon's ownership in SpaceX in terms of ownership versus voting control?
You know that, didn't you? Have
my
that analysis?
It's my understanding that he has a lot of voting control, but do we know the actual nature of that and how it's structured?
I've not heard it. Yeah, thought you would know that.
Well, no, unfortunately, I don't. And that's kind of interesting. The point I guess I wanted to make is if his voting control is kind of secured because he's got this preferential stock of some sort, then you should raise as much money as you can in the IPO because it's not going to impact his voting control.
Right. It has no materiality to that. Yeah.
I'd be very confident that that's the case. Very confident that he would have had some sort of voting, 2 levels of voting control or, voting preference.
It's simply stated, I think he's outweighing the cash. It's the cheapest way for him to get capital versus the pain of being a public company. And I think he's just chosen one pain over the other, so to speak, or one benefit over the potential pain. So, and yes, Cern, I mean, this time around, having those preferential voting shares will secure, will mitigate most of the issues of being a public company, certainly.
That's another idea. What about Elon? He owns what? You'll tell me, Cern, 40+% of
42% share ownership,
SpaceX
I believe.
shares.
Yep.
What if he does a deal with Tesla and XAI and others, and he says, okay, I'm going to do a share swap of my own shares. And then that way he then hits 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only does he able to give SpaceX shares, equivalent, I guess, and then he's able to then increase his share ownership of Tesla.
Is that a taxable event for him?
Well, I guess he would convert SpaceX stock. You're saying swapping SpaceX stock for Tesla stock? Yeah.
His SpaceX stock, he gives it away.
And then I think you run into kind of the whole self-dealing kind of thing, right?
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a way through it to do that. Is that clean? Probably not. Do you open yourself up to lawsuits? Probably. Can it be done? Sure. Is it likely? I would put low odds on that personally.
Okay. Well, first of all, both of you, thank you. This is very important for Tesla investors to understand all of this. So we're talking about these companies becoming multi-trillion-dollar companies. They're all just, and now with this idea of space-based AI, it is just supercharged the vision of where we're all going and how much lucrative this is for Tesla shareholders, XAI shareholders, SpaceX shareholders. But AI5, that chip is the most important thing, according to Elon. He says it. And I just want to highlight here how Elon loves Phil by Sell. He's been replying to Phil quite often. Phil, you wrote this post on X. You guys should follow him. He has these incredible articles he writes, and he explains it in clear language to you, technology and how it applies. Like, he explains it to us to understand what is Tesla doing. So he's talking about the AI is a platform chip, right? I'm not going to read the whole post, but basically you're saying that the reason why AI5 was delayed is because he's re-architecturing it so that it can be applied for the bots, the cars, and now also data centers. And then they want to be able to do a lot, and also AI, space-based AI data center. That's why it's delayed. But Elon then replied to you saying, AI5 and AI6 is my biggest time allocation at Tesla. AI5 will be good. AI6 will be great. This is his biggest time allocation, meaning that he thinks this is so important. And then he says, AI chips are needed for everything. Yeah. Just want to comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very clear that he's seen this as the linchpin. This is the door. The thing that needs the most attention right now is to get through the chip supply problem, chip creation and supply problem, because it's the heart, it's the brain of all embodied autonomy objects that he is going to produce. And obviously now there's further burden because it's likely that this chip is the inference machine of his space-based data center pursuit. So I think my point in that was that we've seen AI4, and there's a lot of people that make comments that like AI4 and take about 3+ years to get an AI5. And why would Elon be confident in saying, oh, I'm going to go now on a yearly cycle, more like Apple does with its A and M processors for iPhone and MacBook respectively. And my point is, no, I think you misunderstand. I think what he's done is he's really AI 5 should in a sense be called AI 1. I think it is the beginning of a clean slate platform chip, and I think that this time around, the chip team has put in more IP. I look, the last time I think what they did was they basically took an ARM core, they built their idea of what a neural processor was, and they kind of, if you will, slapped it together, and they left a lot of the remnant pieces like the ISP and a bunch of other components that you might get in there. And then there's a lot of dark silicon running, sitting in your hardware 4 AI 4 processor in your Tesla. It's doing nothing, and that's a complete waste because every square, or every bit of area on that chip that could be used for a neural processor should be used for a neural processor. And so I think what they've done here is they've stripped it down, and they've kind of gone all the way to, if you will, more of first principles design. They probably are still licensing the ARM core from ARM and not going the sort of open source route on that. But that's okay, because I think they're stripping it down to the necessary, and they're also being very, very careful. It's like a Goldilocks principle, not too hot, not too cold. They're trying to fit it into what is known in the fab side as a half reticle design, so that it's very easy to produce a lot of them at high yield. And that's a very important consideration, because what he doesn't want to do is build a chip that is so powerful that the yields are really slow, are really low because of the production issues, right? So that's an important consideration as well. And I guess the third thing is that they probably have spent a lot of time, more than we would think naturally, worrying about power, because I think in the past, the overage of power on a vehicle platform it's concerning, because obviously you want to use every drop of energy to move the car. But if you've got something like Optimus, I think you're going to see a lot of challenges in that space. So I think they're trying to take what was originally spec'd to be a chip that is in the 500 plus watt range, which is more like NVIDIA training style chip, down to something that's like 200 to 250 max at.
Didn't you say 150?
No, I think he said 250 on this product. I think we've heard in the past that hardware 4, unless I missed something, we know hardware 4 is like kind of 140 max. So clearly this is a chip that's going to use more power, but they've yarded it back appreciably through their design efforts. And of course, sizing has a lot to do with that as well. So it's like pack a lot in, pack a lot in for your punch. And I think then what I think you can see is very rapid follow on to AI 6, AI 7, AI 8, et cetera, et cetera. But by the way, none of this conversation takes off the table the need for Elon to really first principles think the whole fabrication problem, because there is not enough supply in the, this is to be in the category of complex chip, and there's simply not enough suppliers. It's really limited to 2, and those guys are kind of busy. So, or have their business bought out significantly. So I think he's got to kind of go the route of either building or partnering with and co-building a fab with one of these guys, Taiwan Semi or Samsung. I mean, he's already made an indication that he would hold the entire, the Austin Samsung plant.
He'll buy it all. Yeah,
he'll buy it all, but unfortunately, what they would be able to produce is just a fraction of his need.
Just not enough.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the what we're trying to explain here is that Elon's plans is terafabs. He's talking about lunar-based AI data centers, space-based data centers. He's talking about billions of humanoid robots. He's got about autonomous cars, as blanketing the Earth on that as much as he can. All of that requires chips. That's why this is a most important thing. So each of these companies, by the way, this is the largest. These are the largest markets at TAMS, right? Optimus, labor, you got the AI data centers, everything, energy. These are the largest TAMs. And so before we talk about could Elon become a trillionaire next year, Cern, you did some analysis on that. Can you speak a little, Cern, on just this pushback that, oh my God, why is Elon so rich and it should be inhuman? Like what's the word? It should be illegal for people to become that rich.
By the way,
No.
before you go there, I wanted to make one final comment on the chip side. I think that that SpaceX could use part of its funds to go into business with Tesla to build that fab. I think that's a way that Tesla gets out of it. That's a way that Tesla gets out of the cash burn required on its side. Why not? Now you have two public companies.
How much cash does SpaceX have?
Well, after the IPO, how much cash will SpaceX have? I mean, that
billions and billions.
100 billion, 500 billion.
Yeah. So I mean, if people have said, I mean, if you look at Tesla, their balance sheet is in what,
40.
Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, how would you, if you could, how would you build a fab for 40 and still run the rest of your businesses? Well, maybe it's SpaceX that owns a majority of that fab. There's nothing unreasonable about that, because if they operate the data centers in space, which I think they would be the owning entity here, I think that's how he would organize this. As Tesla provides the chips, XAI is the primary customer, and SpaceX is the provider, then it would make sense that SpaceX is potentially in the fab side.
If I'm a Tesla shareholder, I'm pissed. If I don't have access to SpaceX shares, I'm upset. I want all the chips to be made by Tesla.
It may come back to that.
Well, I think that's the good news, at least, is even if you don't, as a Tesla shareholder, get access to SpaceX stock, SpaceX success, SpaceX growth, SpaceX acceleration in their business plans is an unmitigated positive for Tesla, because Tesla needs SpaceX. So in the end, Tesla shareholders will benefit in a major way, even if they can't get their hands on SpaceX stock.
SpaceX will buy lots of chips and lots of Optimus bots.
Yeah, so if they buy the chips from Tesla, boom, I get it. Okay, Tesla's going to be very, very rich. Okay, Cern, before we get to how rich Elon could become, can you address that a little bit of this pushback some people have, which is nobody should be this rich?
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple of whether or not you have a view of the world's a fixed pie of wealth, and we divvy up the pie. And if people become billionaires, that means there's less pie for everybody else. That's one worldview, right? The other worldview is that we don't have a fixed pie, and that people become billionaires because they add value to the world that wasn't there before, right? And I think it's very clear that Elon is putting products and services into the world that have not existed. And by doing so, he's creating a lot of wealth that never existed, right? By making vehicles autonomous, you're creating a lot of value to the world. And so that's where the wealth was created. It's not that he took it from somebody else. He didn't take it from Ford and GM, right? He's creating something that Ford and GM have never created, never had, the world has never seen, right? Same thing with what he's done with SpaceX in terms of building Starship and so on, and Falcon rockets. So that's the distinction I think that's really important to understand, is wealth is not taken, wealth is created.
No.
A lot of politicians want us to think that wealth is taken, and certainly by the government it is. They tax you, but that's not how billionaires make their money. Yeah. They don't take it from somebody else, they create it.
And I think the way you said it might be slightly wrong. You said it's two worldviews. I mean, that the issue is there are two worldviews of it, but one is simply economically incorrect and the other is economically correct.
That's right.
So that's really the issue here, is that the idea that you're taking something from a fixed pie is not really the way it works out from an economics point of view. I mean, the value that Elon is creating in the world through every opportunity from enriching shareholders to employing people in a supply chain. I mean, consider the number of people that are employed by Tesla and all those downstream suppliers. It's in the and SpaceX and XAI. This is in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people that benefit from his activities. And then, by the way, any single person listening to this can benefit from his activities by simply buying a share of stock. There's nothing that stops you. It's not some private thing. It's an open thing. I mean, Elon made a post on when I was talking about that the last boss in his 2025 comp, where he was talking about the 400 billion, and he said, yes, it'll be very hard to do. And then he made a comment saying, but yet everybody here can participate.
Yeah. If you think he
if you think he's going to get there,
then you can invest now, and
you can be part of that. Yeah,
you'll get. So the reason why SpaceX is valued at $800 billion is because they are selling Starlink to customers, and customers are paying them cash, and it's being provided a service globally. The reason Tesla is worth at 1.5 is because people are buying their cars, and they're expecting that autonomous is going to be. People are going to be renting, paying such a low price to be able to get a autonomous robotaxi, which is going to be beneficial, but also customers will pay that. And then eventually people will pay for human or robot customer businesses. That's why they're rich. That's why the companies become rich, is because they're providing value that customers are paying them for. It's not, it's not free money that Elon is getting. So in that context, Cern, you did some analysis here. Let's share this about what is Elon's net worth. And then I want to ask later, if with his net worth rising, like we joke around, but is he going to buy a yacht because of that? Is he going to buy an island? What is he doing with it? No, he's going to probably create another business, and it's going to help him with these businesses, right? So,
yeah, it's interesting. It's fun to track this. This is the last thing on Elon's mind about how much he's worth.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think it's an indication of how much value he's created. The reason that he is worth, in my estimates here, perhaps almost as much as 700 billion today. If SpaceX is valued at 800 billion, Tesla is valued at 1.5 billion. If XAI is valued at 1.5 trillion, thank you. If XAI is valued at 237 billion, and we've got Neuralink and Boring Company, based on his ownership percentages that I believe are in the ballpark here, then Elon's total equity in those 5 businesses, plus another 5 billion and some other assets, gets you to almost 700 billion today in net worth for Elon. Now, I separated his ownership percentages and the voting control. For Tesla, for example, he has an economic interest right now of 12.9%, I believe, but he has voting control of 20.5%. With this latest restricted stock plan, he has been given those shares. He doesn't own them, but he's able to vote them. Okay. SpaceX, I believe there's a significant difference between his ownership percentage, I think around 42%, as best as I can source, and his voting control, I believe 79%. Again, I don't know these numbers for certain, so if anybody has better information out there, I welcome that, but there's a significant difference there. This also makes an interesting side point that if you are to raise capital, where would he rather do it? Through SpaceX or Tesla? If he does it through SpaceX and he's got the control nailed down, then raising capital isn't going to necessarily reduce his voting power as much as it would if he did it through Tesla. It's just something to keep in mind. And this is kind of a negative thing of, Tesla being the early success story and so on. The reality is he's better set up to retain control at SpaceX than he is at Tesla. Although his new compensation plan goes a long way to give him the voting control that he seeks. Anyway, the second half of this table then, Herbert, is how does he get to $1 trillion? So this is one of 2 scenarios that I modeled out. One is people are talking about SpaceX being valued at 1.5 trillion at the IPO. And then if XAI also increases to 275 billion, that gets him to over 1 trillion in net worth. Okay. The second scenario, Herbert, you may have noticed I didn't increase Tesla's valuation, but in this one I did. If Tesla goes to 2.5 trillion, okay, so we're adding $1 trillion on there, and SpaceX is only valued at 1.2 trillion, only in quotes. That also is a pathway to a $1 trillion net worth for Elon. But the interesting observation here is that SpaceX is quite likely to be 50 to 60% of his net worth. It'll be his largest holding in terms of dollar value, more so than Tesla is. And that's, I think, kind of surprising, I think, to many people.
Only surprising to me because was as early as like 6 months ago, a year ago, I kept saying, I'm not understanding SpaceX's revenue model. Because I get Starlink. Starlink is massive and it's going to do really well. But this idea that they're going to go to Mars and they're creating reusable rockets, I get that there's customers that they can sell that and sending tonnage up to space. There's that market. And I said, unless they do asteroid mining, I'm not understanding what their business model, because it's really just expenses to get out to Mars and then nothing in Mars for years, decades, until they, what's their business model? And everybody kept saying, oh, Mars, there's going to be people will pay and cut. Okay, I'm just not clicking. Now that they're talking about space-based AI, and then lunar-based AI, that is clear. And then I just did a show with Brian Wang, and he mapped it out. He calculated everything. And he said, shockingly, Cern, you got to dig into this. He said that space-based AI is bigger than Optimus. That's his calculation. We talked about it. Like, what? How's that possible? Because you and I have already calculated how big Optimus is. So that's why clearly SpaceX should now be at least equal to Tesla.
I mean, once we're no longer constrained to planet Earth, all shackles are off as far as value creation.
I think once you get to a certain price point about your, moving mass to orbit, then everybody's going to join. I mean, basically you hear every company that's talking about space-based AI goes through SpaceX to get there. There's really no other viable path at this point. I mean, they're doing 90% of all payload to space. Now, 90-something% of that, of course, is Starlink itself feeding into the same business model. But I mean, everybody else goes through them. And so once you can create a viability there another way of saying it is it's all about Starship, because that's where the price breaks. That's where you get down to the point where it is viable to send kilograms to space at a price point that everybody wants to play. And then it's their game. I mean, who else can play?
That's right.
It's an incredible business. It's an incredible business because there's no doubt that humankind was destined to get off the terrestrial planet and move into space. And all these ideas that we've had in our heads about space-based this, whether it's planetary or it's just satellite-based objects, need to be moved off of the Earth. And that's the business of SpaceX beyond it. Starlink. If you look at Starlink has an incredibly healthy future, way beyond its current constraint of being, it's considered today, I mean, incredibly successful, but it's largely considered to be terrestrial, rural bandwidth, right? But the reality is every airline, every ocean-going vessel is beholden to it for internet. And at some point in the near future, it's likely to do extreme damage to the terrestrial carriers like the Verizons and AT&Ts and so forth, as it buys up that spectrum and produces a completely viable cellular system, whether it's dense. Elon made a comment recently about, it was in the podcast where he was talking about that Starlink wasn't ideal for densely populated cities, but what he was talking about is broadband, the broadband component. He was not talking about the cellular side. And he's been very, very quiet about the cellular side while he continues to buy up spectrum. And that's a massive business.
It's $340 billion. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
But it's not yet, it's not worth Starlink's going to be big. It's going to be $1 trillion for short, Starlink on its own. But space-based AI just changed the game.
The best analogy that I can draw on this, just to kind of make sense of this, is SpaceX is kind of like this century's South Sea trading company from the 1700s.
That's it.
That stock, that company accounted for 35 to 40% of the entire stock market value. And for many, it was the stock market. Now, of course, there was a huge bubble in the stock. They benefited from slave trade, but the fact remains is that they were the transportation mechanism.
Yep.
Right. And this is what we're talking about with SpaceX going into space.
It's also free energy. It's like zero. This is where you get the near zero energy, because it's like the sun, and the sun is so much more. All the energy in the world is now owned by SpaceX.
Or they're certainly the gatekeeper. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. I think we should start a new company, Starfleet Academy. Let's start training people to be able to go to space. Is it too early?
It's always fascinating as we sit on the what I call the left side of the future of these future businesses to kind of analyze them and say, are we ever going to? And then to Cern's point about these trading companies, that, what was the name of the company again?
South Sea Company.
Yeah, and
was also the East India Company.
East India. There were 2 or 3, right? Just about.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine a time in Europe when pretty much it was locked in and nobody thought there was any viability to any of those types of activities at all? And then suddenly, I think that the problem is that the biggest business models are not the ones that you can plan, because people are very, very poor at planning for disruption. But here we have an incredibly disruptive opportunity here to completely change the economics of putting stuff into space. And the door is SpaceX, and Elon figured that out many years ago. And he's repeated that several times, but people just don't listen to him. I mean, what does he always say about Starship? He's talking about its size because he's talking about the economics of the sizing of the thing, and why that drops the kilograms to space number appreciably. And you wrote an article about that, Cern, and have some numbers on what it costs in the Starship model. It's like, what, 50x cheaper than space shuttle or something to move it? Was it more
something
than
like
that?
I forget the specific numbers, but it's an incredible cost reduction. It's
a huge number. In other words, what it does is it goes from not viable to viable.
Yeah.
And then, like we were, as you said, Herbert, Brian's numbers were talking about, well, what does it take to build a terrestrial data center with all in energy cost and cooling, which is more energy related stuff, physical space, all this. And now you're saying, well, okay, the economics might tilt towards a space-based model where energy is effectively free and cooling is part of the basic radiation of the product. Yeah, it's a different plan.
And if energy is free, then everything else goes into space too. So we're all focused on data centers.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you have access to free energy, then you're highly incentivized to figure out a way to manufacture stuff in space.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you got your Optimus bots, free labor, free energy. This is the interesting, Cern. We've been talking about that, what that's going to impact, Earth. But now you're making me realize actually the way it's going to impact Earth is move it all up to space, which is great, isn't it? Like if factories and all that production is happening in space instead, leaves Earth to be more natural. So a quick question for you guys before we end this. Musk becoming a trillionaire, a multi-trillionaire. How do you think he would spend that, and how does that benefit a Tesla shareholder, or just additional companies, or just his mission and vision?
I think he's going to buy one more prefab house down in Starbase.
50 grand?
Another 700 square foot home to add to his collection of homes.
Prefab house.
Yeah.
For Elon, it's not about the money.
Yeah, that's really.
He's going to amass great wealth. It's not about that for him. I don't think we're ever going to see him buy a super yacht. Although he deserves one for sure. But I don't think that's him. For him, I think it's all about amassing the resources and the teams of people necessary. And certainly wealth helps to do that. He can raise a lot of capital just based on his own personal wealth if he wants to. But the great, I think, genius of Elon is his wisdom and his vision. And people are going to follow him.
Yeah. And that's my point.
I'd say if there's one thing he could buy that's not for sale, he'd buy time.
Yeah, I think he would create new companies. That's almost a given. And then the nice thing is, what we're watching here is the Muskonomy. Each of these companies actually do converge. They actually do help each other. So when one succeeds, Tesla will double, triple, because SpaceX is now able to do AI data centers that they weren't able to do without SpaceX. And then they'll create another company, XAI and Neuralink, and then all these, and another ones. And then it's gonna be incredible. So get in for just that idea alone for the future.
The other reality of Elon's wealth is that none of it's really liquid. There is all of it is amassed in stock, and therefore there's huge incentives for him to want to keep it in that form. There's no reason to move it into a different form. Obviously, there's the simple problems of the taxability of the asset, but it's really like that form also allows him to keep control. So it's incredibly important that it's why I don't think we see him pushing we don't see him pushing money. I think later in his life, and this will be the interesting thing as we bear witness to this, hopefully I do, and you guys certainly will, is to what does he do with this wealth in his most senior years. And I suspect that he will gift it back to humanity in different ways. But at this time, it's so important for him to control these companies. And we saw, look, his entire motivation almost exclusively for the 2025 comp plan is control at Tesla. Let's be honest. He's talked about it. He's very transparent about it. It is about it. Bring in another 12% ownership, I think, Cern, is that about right?
It depends on how much he gets to keep after paying taxes, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the point I just want to make. People say that he's going to make $1 trillion from his new comp plan, his new performance award. If he does hit all his major targets, he does get the $1 trillion. 50% of that is paid to the government as taxes. Yeah. So
if you want to play along, there's this thing called the public markets where you can buy some Tesla stock. And if he makes those milestones, that company is a $20 trillion company, and it's currently a $1.5 trillion company, and you can play along too.
It's a win-win-win for everybody. Shareholders, the public at large, the U.S. government, taxpayers, everybody will win if Elon's successful.
Okay. Well, the game changed, right? SpaceX is now critically important for space-based AI and other things, as you guys talked about. Tesla needs to be part of it. Tesla shareholders may be part of it. You guys explained the various possibilities. Brilliant. You guys are awesome. It shared a lot of information. Really appreciate the research you guys put in. And follow Phil and follow Cern, because guess who else likes to read their things? Elon Musk himself likes to read it for some reason.
By the way,
it's a strong thing, isn't it?
Because it's value. It adds value. He likes to laugh.
So, right? I hate to say this, but every time he comments on something I write, I feel a little bit like
you just took up a little bit of his time, and you should have.
I think you could have spent your time more valuably elsewhere.
Crap.
Maybe I need to divest.
Cern posted this video this morning of the 12 days of Christmas. Very well done. And it's like, just wasted my time. No, I'm just kidding. It was really fun. It was really good.
It wasn't my video. I wrote that song a year ago. Yes. But I'm glad you enjoyed it, Herbert. Thank you.
It was fun. 12 days of Christmas. Great song. Well produced. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you both. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.